So speaking of moving forward, right, very, very shortly, we're going to have our first moderated session. We're going to have a distinguished panel of speakers, and then we're going to have a very good moderator as well to talk about that very interesting topic. And that interesting topic is creating shared prosperity via arts and culture. The key word there being prosperity. Now, we always talk about that creative concept is hard to monetize, but that question and others will be answered in this discussion group. So the moderator for this session is Dr. Ann Lee, who is a very good speaker and an award-winning playwright and researcher. She completed her doctorate in Southeast Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore, a very accomplished individual. She's also worked with both private and public sector funders from the banking and finance industry. And I could go on and on about her CV because she has achieved many, many great things. And she's a very friendly person. I had some time to chat to her over the phone and via Zoom in terms of giving all of you a very, very good presentation here today. And she's taken the time out of her busy schedule, not just to moderate this session, but she'll be moderating another session after lunch as well. So Dr. Ann, on behalf of the event organizers, thank you so much for being kind to take up your time to be with us here today. I won't take up any more of your time. The speakers are itching to speak and itching to share their inspirational views about this very interesting topic. Over to you, Dr. Ann.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Now, I'm very conscious that we are running behind time, so let's just crack on. That was a wonderful presentation from Pak Chandra, and I think to a certain extent, we're going to be sort of blown away by many of the new figures here, including from the Department of Statistics just now. I think the critical thing for us is really the elephant in the room, and that is COVID-19. For all the grand plans that are set out and that have been set out, the challenge is to deal with this pandemic. And I think terms such as arts and culture, it's all changed in many ways. Even the terms of creative industry and creative economy, there's some cobwebs and dust all over those because they've been around for 25 years. And even Shared Prosperity 2030, the reference for our forum, that was launched last year and sort of already feels last season because of how we think the way things are changing. The point about our panel is really to look at how private sector has been developing, has been enabling arts to survive and thrive. And by arts, what do we mean? As the chairman of My Creative Venture mentioned earlier, there's some crossover between what Chandana covers. But Chandana covers performing arts, which of course is dance, theater, music, well, indie music, and visual arts. And you know, we'll hear shortly from Datuk Khairul about painting and sculpture, but much more besides, and craft. Now, our panelists today, I'm going to talk first to two of them, and then we will talk to the other two, and then we'll go straight to Q&A. I'm really reluctant to cut our Q&A time, but apparently we have to cut short our session, so I have to ask our panelists to also please stick to your time as well. Now, let me introduce Amy. Amy Moris is CEO of Maybank Kim Eng. She's, well, that is of course the investment banking arm of the Maybank Group. She's responsible for the investment banking and the businesses across the 10-country regional platform that Maybank has. As an advocate of sustainability first practices, her mission is to humanize financial services by helping clients build more profitable and sustainable businesses that help deliver a more equitable and inclusive ASEAN. She's proud of the bank's transformation into one of ASEAN's leading homegrown investment banks and its contribution towards accelerating ASEAN's progress. And Amy holds a master's in history and philosophy of social and political science, as well as a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics and Politics, both from the University of Essex in the UK. Okay, over to you, Amy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Anne. I know, strict 3 minutes, and my 3 minutes will focus on setting the context for what matters on developing shared prosperity from a capital market perspective. And so, Anne, my time starts now. Could I have the slides, please? As Michelle Obama so eloquently stated, arts define who we are as a people. The world's greatest civilizations throughout history and have proven that the arts are needed to inspire change and infuse values into society. So as you've mentioned, in this era of living with COVID, we really need to seize the moment to build back not only better, but to build back in a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable manner. Next slide, please. So let's talk a bit about sustainability. The UN defines sustainability as meeting our present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And the UN has also declared that 2021 is the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. In my view, growing a robust creative economy sustainably needs to pivot beyond philanthropy and CSR. So next slide, please. Let me explain why. There is today a global movement of capital towards more what we call ESG-focused companies, a shift which is both exciting and real. If you are less familiar with ESG, it is a corporate rating that sits alongside a company's financials and allows investors to also evaluate a company from an environmental, social, and governance perspective. Largely driven by the climate change agenda in the beginning, ESG now goes beyond how we treat the environment, but also how we treat our employees, our partners, and especially our communities. In short, for companies today, there is no trade-off in being good and being profitable. You have to be both, which is the perfect opportunity to collectively build a stronger creative economy. In fact, 64% of millennials consider ESG commitment when deciding where to work and will not take a job if the company doesn't have strong values. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, ESG ratings measure things like employee satisfaction, women managers, community lending and investments, corporate responsibility awards, and even donations per million in revenue. So while these criteria are being evaluated by global rating agencies, it should be no surprise why companies across the globe are looking to advance their social capital, where and how they can to ensure their ESG profile can attract not just investments, but also customers and most importantly, talent. So the ad that you see here, it was placed in the Financial Times, was captured during our Invest ASEAN Thought Leadership Conference. We wanted to bring the conversations on the creative economy directly to our clients, ASEAN's largest public listed companies, and some of the world's biggest investors to showcase and propagate the richness of ASEAN arts and culture to the world. Ultimately, we leveraged the moment to show how arts and business can mix to unleash the creative and innovative potential of ASEAN for a shared and prosperous future. Thank you, Anne.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Amy. I think just to highlight that ESG is, of course, the environmental, social, and governance factors. And if you look at Bursa Saham Malaysia, there are, I think, about 250 companies that have already been rated for their I think it's from 1 star to 4 stars, and we can talk a little bit more about that. I now like to introduce our second speaker. Shanthi Kandiah is Protector. That's what a great name. Protector of the Creador Foundation. It's the non-profit arm of the private equity firm Creador, which is headquartered in Kuala Lumpur. The foundation believes in empowering local communities by drawing on the expertise of Creador to help non-profit organizations in education and arts and culture. Shanthi plays an active role in championing Malaysian arts and culture organizations through the foundation and in her personal capacity. And she believes in the power of the arts to create a vibrant civil society and foster deeper cross-cultural appreciation. She's also played a key role in the development of Creador Foundation's flagship project, Multiply. Shanthi is today joined by Shobana Sivanendran, who's a program manager. Thank you, Shanthi.
Thank you, Anne, and hello to everybody. I guess my slide should come on. Is it on already? Thank you. So we'll go quickly into what Creador is. So Creador is obviously a private equity fund that's based out of Kuala Lumpur, investing in South and Southeast Asia. And Creador Foundation is a registered non-profit organization also based out of Kuala Lumpur. We are funded by Creador, the private equity arm. At Creador Foundation, the vision is really about empowering local communities, and our focus is really on providing people with the tools so they can take ownership of their own lives and be the primary agents for change. So a lot of our ethos goes back to that. How can we, in a sense, provide enough information, education to get people more informed and make better decisions? So that's the primary focus. Next slide, please. And I should add that that's our primary way that we see that as the main pathway to as a sustainable way to help society. Now, our flagship project, you mentioned Multiply, and that is primarily a financial literacy portal that we have spent over 2 years creating, and I would advise anybody in the arts to go to it, because there is a lot of content that, as we navigate the tough times of COVID-19, there's a lot of content that may actually help people in the arts community manage their finances better. So we have content for gig economy workers, we have content for fresh graduates starting out their arts careers, and even those with families. And they cover topics like budgeting, government schemes like SOCSO, retirement planning. So all sorts of information that we think would help artists, people who want to pursue the arts as well. It's intended for everybody, but something that could very much relate to the arts community to have a sustainable path to maintaining their interest and career in the arts. But we have a second focus at the foundation, and that is on financial and business literacy for arts groups. So while we do give funding to certain organizations such as KLPAC, and primarily their Theatre for Young People program, where we provide funding support as well as ASK, again, some funding support. Primarily, what we pride ourselves on is the effort we take to go in, given Creador's strength in financials and even businesses and running businesses. We hope to be able to take some of those skills and transfer it to arts organizations. So again, that being the path towards a more sustainable and self-sufficient type of being. And that's the hope. And that is our primary focus. We see this as a key skill in ensuring continuity of arts organizations if they are not run more efficiently or not able to expand, and also not just to be run more efficiently, but to expand their reach so more Malaysians have access to the arts. And why the arts? And perhaps we can move to the next slide. Why the arts? And so just echoing from Amy Moris earlier, we think that exposure to the arts helps develop creativity. And we think that that is a key tool in generating successful human capital. We also think that participation in the arts contributes to community cohesion, more understanding of cultures and different ways of living and being. And we think that that would then also make communities feel safer. And finally, I think we have some data to suggest that particularly students from low-income areas, the ones that are more engaged in the arts, appear more likely to be able to complete their university education. So there's a diversity and a depth of thought that perhaps comes in through the arts that then empowers them to set on a successful path for their future. So apart from this, I don't know, Shobana, is there anything to add? Would you like to add something about perhaps what we did with KLPAC in terms of the business and financial literacy?
Yes, sure. So if we still have time, Anne.
Very, very quickly, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. Because I could actually ask you a question about that specifically.
Okay, we can come to that.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. So let me get back to you. So here we'll just have a couple of questions and then we'll go on to the other two speakers. But Amy, you were talking about the program that was Kata-Kata, I think, set up in conjunction with, you mentioned the ad that was showing. Because this is about looking about, prosperity, even as we speak, though, I think Chandana's latest figures show that 70% of arts practitioners surveyed have actually lost half, if not all, of their income. 50% of those have families. And I think one of the kind of areas that it has been traditionally kind of cut is our traditional arts or indigenous arts. Now, this program that was conducted with Kata Kata, can you tell us a little bit about how that went as a kind of model or kind of things learned as to a program between private sector and between artists?
Maybank is one of the largest financial institutions within the region. Naturally, what we allocate for our community programs is fairly substantial. It's all available. It's very transparent on our websites. I think one of the key things, rather than focusing on the specific collaboration itself, what really I want to highlight is the intent to move away from just patronage, patronage of the arts, to partnership. And, as the world has evolved, and that's what I've mentioned in my introduction, right? This shift of capital, right, really does represent just not, a shift from collaboration to partnership. It really does represent a shift, a power shift, so to speak. Both sides are out to bring social capital that they value, that each other will value, to create something a lot more powerful, a lot more potent in terms of creating, as Pak Chandra earlier set out, right? The creative economy itself is beyond, kind of looking at events or specific artists or artisans. Here, if you're talking about within the context of the 12 Malaysia plan, for example, is really the multiplier effect, the kind of scale that we want to achieve, right? So Malaysia's GDP contribution from the creative sector is below 2%. And Indonesian, if I saw earlier from Pak Chandra, is a lot higher, right?
Yes, yes. But in a way, it sort of begins with the relationship with the actual artists, with the groups and individuals.
Yeah.
So how if you can briefly, just to sort of talk about, okay, in terms of funding, how does your organization work with artists? How is it going to work with artists in the next year?
Okay, so and specifically, I know you're interested to talk about how living with COVID can also be morphed, right? So one of the things, the custodian of a lot of our community programs naturally is within Maybank Foundation. And one of the things that is the pride and joy of our CEO, Khairul, who I think he's also watching, is the creation of Balai Seni for Arts, which is really utilizing a beautiful space that is in Menara Maybank for exhibition, as an exhibition space for young artists emerging and established, etc. So this is one initiative that has received definite financial commitment from the group, right, to ensure that we are able to exhibit continuously. And in 2019, in 2020 with COVID, what Khairul has actually, and he's actually shared, or we could actually share it today, is to ensure that we also use technology. So instead of because the physical gallery is closed, we are actually now, I think he's launching tomorrow, a virtual gallery where artists are still able, to have these partnerships with organizations and be able to kind of, use different types of technology to still be connected. And so coming back to your question, like, what is the value, right?
Yes, yes.
To me, the artists, artisans, performers, whatever, ultimately also need to ask one question, like, how can you help people like me, right, to transform ourselves? Because we are also in need of transformation, right? How do we understand new talent with the Gen Zs who are going to be the ones who are creating the real agenda moving forward? Right. So the creative arts needs to help us do that.
So it needs to be much more of a partnership and not sort of begging, going to sponsors and so forth. Is that all sort of CSR 101, throw money at the problem?
Yeah, that CSR stuff, the power shift is...
Okay, right. Thank you, Amy. Now I'd like to ask you from the Creador, how actually have you worked with the Kuala Lumpur Performing Arts Centre to improve their, the Creador Foundation's skills in financial management? Can you tell us a little bit about how that has happened?
Okay, sure. Okay. So basically what we did was, apart from giving them a financial contribution as well, we saw a space for Creador to actually come in to assist them with some of their business processes. And this was done in two main ways. So one was some of their internal processes in terms of, just keeping a track of the budget and planning, their finances better for the year, and being able to also just see what their finances were in real time, given that, in terms of administration, there were some limitations with accounting staff on their end. So we saw that as, advice that Creador could bring from the finance side of Creador into the KL Performing Arts Center. And then the second thing we did was we also improved their reach a little bit in terms of their fundraising and communications. So by helping them set up some automated email systems, and think about, when communicating with fundraisers, us being, a funder from the funder side, being able to see what other funders are looking for when they're thinking about whether to fund an arts organization or not. And so just helping them kind of make sure that the information that they shared is a bit more streamlined, and they do a really good job already. So what we were trying to do was kind of enhance that and put systems in place that they could then take and use repeatedly year on year when doing their fundraising.
Okay, and was that a relationship that's sort of a 3-year or 2-year, 1 year? How do you see that?
Yeah, so I think what we saw was that in the first year we would be extremely involved, and that's what we did last year. And what we've done is we slowly kind of left a bit more of the responsibility with them over time as they get a bit more familiar with the processes themselves. And then it becomes a bit more of us kind of monitoring rather than actually actively going in and providing the support. But we're always on hand to help whenever they need it. But we see this as a way to wean off, so that then in the future we can use our resources for other things.
Other things. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I have to leave things there. Thank you so much for that. Okay. I'd now like to introduce our next two speakers. Well, the first person who is known to many, Dr. Hajjah Yatela Zainal Abidin, who is CEO of Yayasan Sime Darby. Now, she's been so for more than 10 years, leading YSD and carrying out impactful initiatives under its arts and culture pillar. And she has, the Yayasan has been awarded 2 national awards, Distinguished Patron of the Arts, and the Anugerah Tokoh Seni Korporat during the Royal Arts Gala in 2014. I think I'll save more of the scope of contribution that YSD has done, but just some kind of overview in terms of the numbers to crunch. YSD has nurtured 309 Malaysian artists to produce 90 creative works and reached out to more than 1.8 million in audiences. So with that, I'd like to pass over to Yatela. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Slides. Are they up? Okay, they are. Alangkah indah tarian inang. Langkahnya rapi mengikut susunan. Semoga seni terus dijulang untuk tinggalan zaman berzaman. Yayasan Sime Darby or YSD, formed in 1982, is the philanthropic arm of the 3 Sime Darby companies and is governed by an independent council to deliver sustainable impact under our 5 pillars, one of them being arts and culture. We aim to increase sustainability, appreciation and accessibility to Malaysian arts, culture, heritage and traditions, while assisting Malaysian artists to gain recognition and improve their livelihoods via our focus areas of arts and culture encouragement, development, and education and empowerment. We had spent about 28 million ringgit in the last 10 years, working with various partners to support diverse arts projects under our arts and culture pillar. Next slide, please. One of these are arts festivals. Our own YSD Arts Festival, or YSDAF, which we work together with KL PAC on, had attracted more than 47,000 attendees in the 3 editions held, with half of them being totally new to the arts. The YSDAF is an all inclusive. It's attended by people from all backgrounds and showcases a variety of art forms such as theatre, music, dance, visual film, and is a voice to marginalized groups, including the differently abled, the B40s, refugees, and people living with HIV and AIDS. Now, including YSDF, we've supported 10 types of arts festivals across the country, which also include short films, classical music, jazz, brass, and many other types of arts forms. Now, we've supported them on 29 occasions, assisting more than 1.3 million people to experience the arts in Malaysia. Next slide, please. In the last 10 years, we've focused on capacity building while supporting new creative works and artists, especially emerging ones, in the areas of dance, theatre, film, literature, archiving, visual arts, installations, restoration, and creative hubs. With Ask Dance Company, we are currently supporting free online traditional dance classes for Malaysians to learn the Zapin and the Terinai. This is our 4th project with ADC after supporting 3 phases of free physical dance workshops and free dance performances all over Malaysia. We've supported ADC for more than 10 years now, and they're practically family. So is KLPAC, Five Arts Centre, the Royal Press, but we do provide one-off sponsorships and short-term support to those who need it and who can meet our requirements as a corporate foundation. The closing slide. Next slide, please. If we have them, shows our cherished partners in our arts journey. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I would like to come back to you a little bit later to ask, well, you know, even now, I mean, the way Yayasan Sime Darby has kind of worked in the past and you know, in the last decade it has the various pillars, right? It has, I think it's education, environment, sports, right?
Health, yes.
And yes, and I think culture and arts receives the smallest, right? It's 27.95 compared to, say, sports, which is 200 million, or education, you know, 300 million. Now, environment at 159 million, and health. Do you think, in relation to this sort of the current challenge of COVID-19 and the way in which sort of things are having to move digital, you know,
yes,
that actually we'll have to rethink some of those ways in which arts and culture have been used? I mean, we know, and some panelists have already said, you know, arts and culture can be put within a healthcare sector. The value of arts includes that it is therapeutical, that you know, that it is healing. I mean, even entertainment, you know, we go, why are we going to entertainment? We're going to feel good. We want to, you know, escape other things. So I think this aspect of kind of shifting everything to cope with post-COVID, do you think that will change in the next kind of, you know, foreseeable future?
It's changing already, Anne.
Okay.
For example, our collaboration with Ask Dance Company. Previously, it was physical workshops all over Malaysia. But with the new Phase 4 collaboration, we are onto online free dance classes for everybody. And it's not only for Malaysians, but also everybody around the world. So it's a bigger outreach. And it also fills the gap within the education system within the country. Because for schools, public schools, because of COVID, they've had to stop co-curriculum, sports, etc. Now, because Ask Dance Company has got the endorsement from the Ministry of Education, who completes this dance class and gets evaluated and succeeds, they actually get a certificate endorsed by the Ministry of Education for them to earn points for co-curricular. So we are already moving towards digital.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I think some useful reference has been made, that was made in the first or part 1 of this forum that was held 2 weeks ago, and talking about the sort of the pipeline. Now, I mean, what comes to mind right now is sort of water pipeline, but the pipeline meaning from arts education right through to careers, and therefore right through to creating products and services, and having a much more kind of, but also including a paradigm that arts is about health and well-being. You know, arts, like water, is also an essential service. I want to go now through to Datuk Khairul, who is CEO of Media Prima television networks, and in a way, just like Yayasan and Sime Darby has kind of covered through, as has Maybank and Creador, covered earlier sort of or wider ranges of what the arts are for. Now we look to the kind of end game in a way. Datuk Khairul is, he was appointed CEO of Media Prima on the 1st of August this year. Now he's responsible for the overall operations and to strengthen its core businesses while pursuing new business opportunities in line with Media Prima's long-term growth strategies. He oversees TV3, NTV7, 8TV, TV9, Tonton, and the home shopping business Wow Shop. Datuk Khairul is a graduate of Curtin University of Technology, WA, in 1992 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts Sculpture. And he also holds a diploma in painting from La Salle College of Arts in 1989. I'd like to pass now to Datuk Khairul.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. Yeah, I think everybody is quite familiar with the phrase "content is king." Well, when I started this journey, I never understood or never heard of that. Started as a passionate young man who likes to get myself busy with things. I started as a theatre actor, then went to directing theatre, and then pursuing fine arts because of the love and passion for something that is it's a personal passion. But today, if you the next slide, please. Today, I run a TV business, a TV platform business that runs 4 mainstream free-to-air channels. With these 3, and when I first started, I didn't understand what's the meaning of content is king. But today we realize that we have more than 20 available content channels that is desperately and hungry looking for content from content producers. So the landscape has changed from the day I first started, maybe 30 over years ago, till today. And by the day, we hear of the market talking about new platforms that is mushrooming, looking for content, especially in the digital space. If you can I see the next slide, please? Yeah. So Media Prima is it's an integrated media group. I run the TV platforms. We also have our print business, still very with a lot of talent, writers, journalists who can translate big headlines into words that people can understand. We also have radio. We have with Ripple, all the radio channels. We have Prime Work Studio, which is our film arm, animation, and other branded content activities out there. We also have Big 3, which is the TV, outdoor TV advertisements. But what I would like to highlight is our digital arm, which is RAF Media Group. This is the future. The mushrooming platforms that I mentioned earlier comes from this space. I think during COVID, you mentioned earlier, when we were during MCO, we were stuck. We don't have any content in our hands, but through digital, we could manage to put together new content, and that has become a format, and that has become a form, a communication tool that is now commonly used. So I see a lot of positive or potentials in that space. I have friends from the theater spaces sharing their issues about reaching out to their audience. Well, content is king, but distribution is key. if not Queen, maybe the Prime Minister. But distribution is very important because the distribution enhances the experience of that content. So theatre practitioners or other form, I think we mentioned about fine arts sharing a virtual gallery. So we have to take advantage of the current situation and available technology to transform and allow new experiences for audience to enjoy content. I think that's very much my sharing for now. But definitely I will take questions from you, Anne.
Okay, thank you. Just one really question, and then I want to open it up to everyone. I think some of the kind of early innovation, kind of trying to cross over the traditional barriers between theatre and television have already been happening. Actually, two things I want to mention. For example, I think Instant Cafe Theatre, they came up with a Zoom Para, a play by Alfian Saad. And it was all created around Zoom. I mean, personally, Zoom to me is kind of, I can't wait for 6.0 because it seems very, very basic as a kind of a communicating, sort of connecting kind of form. But, and it's interesting because I think I understand that one academic actually refused to consider it as theatre because it was, on this new platform. And I think that's also some of the shifts that have to change. I want to ask you in relation to, for example, you mentioned the digital, that you think that's the future. There's a book, Wayang and Its Doubles by Jan Marcek from the NUS, and he talks about how Wayang and its relationship has developed over the years for being both kind of broadcast on television and broadcast on more sort of, not television, but on your personal device. Do you have any kind of thoughts around how to develop deeper connections with performing arts, with visual arts, in the way that Cendana's kind of ambit is? I mean, I know you're a very modest chairman, but you are chairman of Cendana as well. So in, wearing both of these hats, do you see kind of any future, immediate changes or developments around those kinds of relationships?
I think it really depends on the audience that we want to speak to and which platform is most convenient and most comfortable for them. So, for example, it can be quite. It might not work for certain form of arts if you try and force feed to the mass platform, for example, because mass media, free-to-air television has a different set of audience that has created certain habits. But we also see new habits forming in the online spaces. Okay. So trying to understand the audience that's available there and catering to them and offering them new choices is what it's about today. So I think in that space, we see some nice collaboration or growth. It's quite fluid. We can't seem to be able to really hold on to or hold on to something that we say, okay, yes, we found our audience. But I think we have to keep progressing and keep trying and fail a lot of times before we can find it.
It's about developing audiences as well, right? There's a lot of talk around developing audiences. I mean, I think typically if you sort of put one camera there in front of a wayang show for 3 days, it has not necessarily become a culture for all of us from arts education to now, but there's ways in which presumably, to create new audiences, there's ways. It's just don't stick the camera there and make us, watch. So we can go in and out and so on, right?
Yeah, so technologically, we can use the expertise of broadcasting craft artisans or cameramen, directors to actually capture content that is not necessarily for the mass audience, but put it in a form that people can have better appreciation of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for that. Now we have a little bit of time for questions, and I'd like to open it up to our attendees. Now Jen has a question. Would you like to speak to us directly, or are you there? Is she there? Okay. Now the question is around, can you tell us more about corporations allocating more money into art, as it has an influence in those sections as well as health and environment? Can you tell us more, if I'm not mistaken, yes. Can you tell us more about how you choose to work with arts and culture vis-a-vis other, or how you have traditionally seen either, whether it's sort of charity or sports? Can you, Amy, would you like to go with that first, perhaps?
Well, the thing is, there are many different ways that you can collaborate with different segments of arts and culture, for sure. I think, in my view, the defining line is when both sides can sit down and agree what is the value that each party brings to the table for the other side. It's got to be mutually agreed upon. And I know that the arts, creative people will typically think finance people are, let's say, really dry and boring, bean counters, and don't appreciate the softer qualities of the arts that can move civilizations. We do appreciate, and we are trying to learn, right, on how to also come to agreed outcomes, right? So I think because from the world of finance, the key operative word is things have to be quantifiable, right? So, corporations need to be able to say, dare I say it here, what's the ROI, correct? That much dreaded three-letter word, which we all get very flummoxed when we are asked, including myself, right? When my boss asks me, so what's the ROI on this, right? But I think this is a process. This is the journey of partnership, and especially within the ESG framework. Say, for example, to qualify for a Bursa company to be FTSE for Good, for example, there are 300 indicators that are so granular. And this, the granularity, whilst tedious, is really to, help people to come to the table and really collaborate on, common definitions. I think that's where common definitions, right? So because sometimes, the world seems very far apart. So how choices are made, just like any other investment, what's the returns on my investment? And both sides can argue it out, because as you've seen, as I've mentioned before, ESG considerations within social capital is very, very huge. It talks about diversity and inclusivity within a huge context that allows for participation from many different segments.
Right. I think that one of the big shifts that happened that Chandana has, and My Creative Ventures have sort of shifted to cope with COVID-19 and the reality of artists being out of work and finding alternative, and being in some cases life-threatening situations, is to actually shift from a sort of a loan basis to a grant basis. Do you think that that is, you go to a bank or you go to a funder, you need to be able to explain how you're going to return, give returns, the ROI on your product and services. Now, if it's something like cinema, where because of social distancing, nobody's going, what kind of understandings do you think that banks themselves may have to shift in terms of looking at, there's a question here from Mustafa, can banks understand that the arts and creative economy are assets and not liabilities? What would be your comment to that?
Virtual financing.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kai has clearly said it, right? The metaphor that I would use is this. People seem to think that, oh, when we are on Zoom, it's basically transporting ourselves from physical form to on the screen, which is not true, right? Because when you are on a Zoom webinar like this, you have to talk a lot faster, you have to project in a different way. The content has to be different. You can't just use the same slides and then expect that kind of appreciation. That's what I'm trying to say. So it is through this, this is a great point of inflection. That's what I'm trying to say. COVID is, in as much as it's a crisis of humanity, it's also an inflection point for humanity to re-evaluate, right, how we engage, etc., and and embrace the different dimensions of virtual realities, which the Gen Zs, the upcoming workforce that is going to dominate and influence the social agenda. They're going to tell us whatever we're speaking today may be totally irrelevant. They can't connect with us because they're digitally, they're socially native, right? So we had millennials who were digitally native. Now we have the social natives, and we could be talking amongst ourselves and make no, an ounce of relevance to them in terms of how they want to decide, right, on things that matter to them.
Right. There's some discussion here around, if we want to help, there's a question here, if we want to help corporations to understand arts and culture in more depth, in your view, and this I'll ask this for everybody, in your view, how do artists best engage you? If for example, there's an alliance for business parties in the arts, so the private sector, there used to be an alliance. I think MIPA was that too, but it's closed now. But the idea is that those who are in the private sector and those who are in business for the arts, can you all kind of get together in a way that helps the development of arts and culture as well?
Maybe I can start. Yeah. I think let's address the ROI issue, because I think we can't avoid it by not pretending that it's not going to surface. But I think if we can address that, the two parties sit down and try and understand what is the measurement systems, or what is important for the patrons or for the banks, and for the artists to also understand, oh, okay, this is my audience. I need to make sure that the audience the audience gets what is required, or the client gets what is required, and then finding that meeting point is what is not happening today. I think perhaps Cendana is one of the platforms that can actually try and strike that balance between the corporate sectors and the art community. I think that's the role of Cendana, which I think will always try and find that meeting point, so that understanding of ROI can be addressed very quickly, and then we can start coming up with strategies.
Okay. Shanthi, do you have any comments?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, I like the idea of corporates getting together. I guess our perspective is corporates can do more to support the arts, and I think there needs to be also a realization that the arts does need support in many countries in the world. It doesn't exist on its own. It's not self-funding. You do, and a lot of governments spend a lot of money on supporting the arts. So if we're at a time where that is too difficult for the government to undertake at the moment, then perhaps there's scope for more coordinated efforts. Creador Foundation, our angle is always scale. We want to make our money go far. And so we want to see impact. And so we don't really measure it in terms of ROI, but rather impact. And so maybe a return, impact. And so what is the impact that, as an artist, that particular program can make? And or what your institution, so let's say you're an art house, how many people are you reaching today? And Where do you see yourself going? And the larger that number, the more interested we become.
Right.
And the more you are, the more interested we become, because that's what we want. There's, you know, always going to be competing needs, right, for funding.
Yeah.
Today, particularly, and we see, you know, as you've mentioned, you know, whether it's hospitals or we try and do as much as we can, but it's not a bottomless pit.
Right.
So really, to get, I think, a funder interested, you need to show impact. And if you come with an idea, arts organization come with an idea and say, private sector, you know, get together, do in the US, when I used to live there used to be once a year when there is a massive fundraising effort. You know, they put on videos and ads that really kind of play to your heart about, you know, this organization is going to die if you don't support it, blah, blah, blah. So, and then everybody just donates, even if it's 10 ringgit, 30 ringgit, you know, then there's a huge pool, and then that funding gets allocated. Something like that's more organized, because it seems very ad hoc, and the reality is all of us are too small to really make an impactful change. So I totally support more coordination. And, you know.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
so
initiative. Yeah.
Sorry, just to follow up on.
Sorry,
Shanthi.
Amy, can I just ask? Sorry. Can I ask Dr. Yatela for your opinion?
Okay, I'd just like to take the opportunity here to say that Yayasan Sime Darby has more allocation for the arts. We have had actually allocations every year according to our 5 pillars for arts and culture. But unfortunately, the take-up rate is not high. We've been advertising, we'll be putting on our social media, etc. And just check out our website as well. There are not many takers to be partners with us to actually receive our support and grants. Maybe it's because we're a bit frightening. I do not know the kind of information that we require. The ROI that you're talking about now, the return on investment, the impact that we are looking at, and the kind of documentation and paperwork that's involved as well. But
Yes,
we as corporate funders, we require that because of the transparency and governance that is built into the system. And that we are actually willing to help anyone who really, really requires our assistance and support to actually learn how to. If you're just frightened, just let us know. We really want your support, but we're not sure how to. We can actually help as well. It's actually the collaboration in the two-way talk. We need to understand that arts practitioners do not understand us. But I hope arts practitioners also understand why we need to have those documentation, those evidences, those ROIs. And actually ROIs, they don't have to be that difficult because we are also not very, technical. So what we're looking at are simple things like, for example, Ask Dance Company, how many views, how many participants who get through 100%, who complete it, for example. Those are simple numbers we can put as targets. And if we meet those targets, we will, inshallah, continue to support. But we're looking for more partners now.
Right. I see. Well, I know that it is a significant concern about being able to fulfill a lot of the, it's not just paperwork, I think, right? I mean, obviously, it's something that, Creador Foundation is doing really helpful in terms of advising on how, to kind of plan your sort of financial management over a period of time. But like to do with the shifts, I think, the really fundamental life-changing shifts of COVID-19 to arts and culture, which, we saw, restaurants open before cinemas, although, cinemas, of course, are something else. But, the venues of theatre spaces have closed down. So if they who have already been, say, I think one of the recommendations typically, if you have to have been 3 years in the business and show your 3 years worth of income tax, or show your, that is going to be very difficult for a lot of freelancers whose income may not actually be significantly high, right? So presumably since there is this opportunity for funding, that perhaps some of the kind of shift also is around, not to say lessening the standards, but kind of accommodating needs from both sides.
We have done that.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes, we
And-
have done that especially for the younger ones, where we have connected them with the older ones so that we can actually get assurance as well.
Right. Okay. And that fund is still open, and that's up for people to apply
Yes.
for. And okay.
Yes.
Yes, so Anne, I just wanted to drive home one point. I think
Okay,
both
sure.
Shanthi and Dr. Yatela was trying to, they really were trying to emphasize that as well, is that ROI doesn't need to be financial, right? ROI
Yes.
can be on
It's not
social
RM.
impact. An artist, if an
Tell us,
artist came to me,
can you tell us what do you mean? Yeah.
if an artist were to come to me and say, Amy, I can tell you exactly what are the strategies and what are the programs that we can work together on to help you bring more women in your senior management team, I would definitely be, totally engaged, right? Because
Right.
within my own ESG rating, right, which I need to, regulators will want to see, et cetera, how am I bringing in more women into senior management? And we all know the issue of women, on the pyramid workforce, right? So as you go higher up, there are fewer women. So if somebody were to be able to say to me, I can help you in your change, in your organizational culture change, right? Where more senior women are going to be attracted and feel, the conviction of working with your organization, right? So that's a change or a shift in the conversation.
Right. Yep, definitely. And it's still about the utility of the arts. It's still about sort of, the purpose. What is the arts for? I'm struck by a conversation from the first forum 2 weeks ago. Ed Vasey, who was former Culture and Digital Minister of the UK, he talked about how there's now a National Academy of Social Prescribing, which is to say that it's for health and well-being. So when you, in relation to arts and culture, this means that the prescription given to you may not be medicine in terms of, a Panadol or whatever it is in relation to your mental health. It's actually, the prescription will be join a choir. Now, I think this is part of the
Awesome.
shifts that are awesome, right? These are the kinds of changes that I think everybody along the pipeline, that water pipeline, the water is essential for life, like arts, is happening. And the challenges for everybody, I think that's quite clear. Now, I think we are due for time now. I think that's us. If there's any other questions, just having a look. Nope, not for now. So okay, with that, then I would like to thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you for our attendees as well. I towards shared prosperity for the arts, and if there's an initiative in which private sector companies can get together, I know MyPass seems to have kind of folded, but yes, come on, obviously everybody needs to get together to think this through. And
Chandana will lead that. Chandana will lead that.
Chandana will do that.
There's a big shout out to Ethan and the Chandana team.
Thank you all so much. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.